Today we're at METALCON 2022 and we're going to be discussing a steel market update here for quarter four going into the end of the year. What's up guys, welcome to the Metal Roofing channel. Welcome to Q&A Mondays. Today we're doing a steel market update for Q4 2022. We're here at METALCON, Indianapolis. Today I have Brett from Sheffield Metals and Dave from Mitsui. Thanks for being here, guys.
Our pleasure. Yep.
So we're gonna start by giving some numbers of where the steel market is right now and kind of where steel is sitting here. Again, we're in mid-October.
Well, currently as we are sitting here today, steel has started to reduce in price from a correction earlier from this summer. We had as you guys are very aware, we've had a steel run-up in prices in 2021, which is a very unprecedented year. Things have started to correct. So right now, if you look at kind of July 1 to where we are today, a basic hot roll black coil has kind of come down in price about $250 a ton. Influencing that are other factors though. We've still seen other commodities and other parts of the steel supply chain have risen in price, things like freight and paint and zinc and other things, components. But overall, that market has kind of corrected from earlier this summer. It's kind of settling in at this level here for Q4.
Awesome. And then once we talk about Sheffield Metals prices, kind of where are we sitting here with Sheffield? Where does it come down from the summer? What are we looking at?
Very similar to, spot pricing for hot roll, roughly a 20-25% reduction in price. I know we recently had a price reduction, and our pricing follows in line with, for the most part, what the mills are doing.
So can you tell us a little bit about Mitsui?
Yes, Mitsui is a international conglomerate. We have offices in over 50 countries across the world. One of our big segments is the iron and steel division. And here in North America, our iron steel group is headquartered out of Chicago. But we're basically, Mitsui as a whole, we're moving about 25 million tons a year globally. But then here in North America, we're supplying hot roll, cold roll, coated coils, and other non-flat carbon products as well. So, we're, have a lot of access and a lot of touch points, and we're happy to be here with the guys at Sheffield today.
Awesome. Yeah, we appreciate you being here. So talk to me about the demand for construction and manufacturing for steel right now. What's that looking like towards the end of the year?
So far, it's been pretty stable. There's been some irregularities in the automotive market, which is a big steel consumer, but the construction market has stayed relatively stable. We have our eyes on what the interest rate changes are going to do to this total construction market. There's a lot of uncertainty, we think, as we move into 2023, but we expect 2022 to kind of coast into the end of the year and be indicative of what else we've seen here in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brett, what have we seen from Sheffield customers? Have you heard anything about their how busy they are, what they're looking like at the end of the year here?
I think we've built up quite a backlog of orders. Our customers, I think, are pretty solid through the end of this year. We all have our eye on 2023 and possible economic headwinds, but for the most part, things look pretty stable.
Sure.
We're finishing off the year.
And if I'm a business owner, a steel consumer, someone that uses steel for my products, whether it be roofing or whatever, what do I do with this information as we head towards the end of the year and kind of look for 2023 and kind of see that uncertainty unfolding?
Well, we fundamentally don't believe that the steel industry is going to divert much from the macroeconomic industry here in the United States, the general economy. But if I was a consumer of steel right now, I would stay very close to your suppliers. Watch some of the key metrics of lead time, scrap prices and other things, but stay very close to your suppliers, know your inventory levels, keep an eye on your working capital, especially with interest rate changes. But that would be our fundamental recommendation.
Understood. And Brett, what would you suggest, as far as inventory levels for a customer, what should they kind of keep in mind as they're, booking new business, bidding jobs? What do you think about that?
Obviously holding inventory of a commodity in a volatile, economic time is a very risky proposition. So we like to run our inventories as lean as possible. We are buying what basically our customers need. We're selling, what's coming in the door. We don't hedge. We don't, take on any risk thinking that the market might go up.
Yeah, because, a contractor or whoever might get themselves in a bind. If they aren't watching that pretty closely. What else haven't we talked about that we want to cover here?
I think when you talk about looking forward to 2023, to be very candid, just most of the industry is just very uncertain. We're in, METALCON here is very much a collection of the industry minds from the mill side, the service center side, the OEM side, and even the contractor side. We all come together here for a few days in Indianapolis. So this is a great time to talk to those resources. But the general consensus we're kind of seeing for going 2023 is a very uncertain look. The indicators are not necessarily pointing in one specific direction. That dreaded recession word is being tossed out there. But even as you move around here on the show floor, I think most people have a cautious amount of optimism. We don't see a lot of pervasive pessimism. If you kind of stay away from the TV, you have a little bit more cautious optimism for most of the people we've been speaking to here. So we're cautiously optimistic as well for 2023 for steel demand and steel consumption.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, that's a great point about METALCON. What have you seen, walking the show floor, talking to customers, anything new or interesting that, METALCON has kind of brought?
This is my first METALCON, so I'm a newbie. I think the attendance has been really good. Everyone and anyone is here at the show. Made some good networking calls and been able to meet some new people that I think will benefit our customers in the future.
It's awesome. Mm-hmm. So as we all know, we've really experienced a lot of uncertainty and difficulty in the supply chain. What does that look like going forward towards the end of the year and into 23?
Well, I think through the rest of the year, you're going to see relatively stability of what we see now. But, continue with the theme of the uncertainty of 2023, there are some questions. The supply chains are not necessarily completely smooth yet. Many of us hear about the challenges of the automotive sector because of computer chips, but we have some of those in the basic construction sector as well. There are some labor negotiations going on that are still ongoing with some of the steel mills and their particular unions. That could be a disruption to the industry. The national rail workers and the railways have not necessarily reached an agreement yet. That could be disruptive to the macro economy as well as the industry. We are seeing some new capacity brought on in 2023 in the steel industry. We think it will kind of be offset with some antiquated capacity that might not come back. So the supply chain necessarily disruption is not over. We think people are managing it better and learning to live with some of those things better. We think it's a little smoother. The roughest patches are probably behind us, but there are still some challenges ahead. And, the steel industry has always been evolving. It's a very dynamic industry. Even though it has a little bit of a slow-moving reputation, it has a relatively dynamic pace within it. So 2023 could be very interesting with respect to that if all of these supply chain things get smoothed out, or we have a major disruption like a labor situation or a rail situation. That can have very immediate consequences to the supply chain for steel distribution.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important, as you said earlier, to stay close to your suppliers, really build that relationship so you can understand what's best for your business.
It's something we value at Mitsui, and I know, Brett, you guys value it at Sheffield, is knowing your customers, knowing your suppliers, understanding their challenges, and try to form those true partnerships out there for successful supply chain.
Exactly.
We're really thankful for our relationship with Mitsui. You guys provide a wealth of knowledge and market intelligence, and we look forward to continuing that business relationship.
Absolutely. We value it very much as well.
And make sure you stay up to date with everything happening in the steel market. Subscribe here to the Metal Roofing channel for more updates just like this one. You provide any information for your customers about the steel market, anything like that?
Yes, we do. We put out a little notice on Sunday evenings that Brett receives and others, and it's just a kind of a general feel for the market. We don't necessarily go too deep into the graphs or some of the other things that some of the larger paid services do, but we really pride ourselves in trying to give our customers and people in the steel industry kind of a very hands-on opinion of what's happening on a week-to-week basis, and that's our ultimate goal.
All right, well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Comment down below if you have any questions. As always, I'm Barnette, and we'll catch you next time.